All right, so we'll start now. Um, it is my pleasure to introduce Ali Kazadeh, a PhD candidate and senior instructor at Middle East Technical University, Northern Cyprus, with 21 years of teaching and teacher training experience. He specializes in post-method and transformative pedagogy with a strong focus on learner autonomy, motivation, and engagement. He has presented at IATEFL SIG in 2023 and 2024, as well as FoELT Trinity College in 2024. His proposal on teacher development has also been selected for presentation at IATEFL International Conference 2025. His work explores innovative and inclusive teachers' development models. So, hello, and thank you so much for joining. And yeah, the stage is all yours.
Hello, Shirashi. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Trinity College London and the event organizers for bringing us together. So today I want to share a very practical routine that helped my students become more thoughtful and responsible users of AI in their everyday English work. And as the title says, it is ethical AI literacy. So we ran a 6-week sequence of short scenario-based tasks with B2 learners. And each week, students asked an LLM, large language model, for help and checked the output with a tiny cue card, and then produced a language that was not only, let's say, grammatically sound, but also ethically sound, which is the focus of this research. So I'm not here to argue for or against AI in some abstract way. In our classrooms, AI is already, in the workflow, translating a paragraph, or I don't know, paraphrasing a source. You fix the grammar, you polish the tone, so on and so forth. So the real question becomes, in some way, how do we teach judgment so that students can use these tools without outsourcing their values? And that's where the routine, let's say, comes in. So you might be wondering what we found. So on a quick 12-item bias detection test, scores didn't move much over 6 weeks. And you might be thinking, so did nothing happen? Where we saw a clear lift was in the depth of a student's reflections. They named biases more precisely and described the language moves they used to repair them and plan what they would do differently next time. And that was a meaningful shift because metacognition usually improves before fast automatic performance does. So I hope you will leave with a recipe you can actually run next week in your class, for example, or later on. There is a 5-stage workflow and the little cue card that I will be talking about later on, which is source bias and impact, and the reflection log, and also the marking approach, and a set of open licensed materials you can localize for your context. So I'll talk about what didn't move and why I think that matters. And if you want something that something lightweight that fits into a normal 90-minute, let's say, lesson, and still protects learning time for the rest of your syllabus, this could be for you. So let's move on. Okay. Yes. So about this session's overview, uh, before we start, here's how we will spend our time together. We have 3 goals. First, I'll show you a weekly routine you can repeat as is. And second, we will look honestly at what changed and what didn't, because as I just mentioned, both matter for planning. And third, you leave with some materials you can, use in your own context. So the roadmap here is with the why. The AI, as I said, is already inside your student writing and reading habits, and ignoring the fact helps no one. We have to just acknowledge it. Then I'll define the gap we targeted, and the 2 research questions we asked. And from there, we will just go to the framework, 5 quick stages, and a prompt for your students that they can actually memorize and use. And I'll walk you through one concrete example so you can just picture it in your own class. And next, a quick look at methods that fit a real timetable, followed by the results. So you'll see, numbers for the quiz and a very clear shift in reflection depth, plus what students actually wrote in their logs. And we'll match that against teacher workload as well, because feasibility is what keeps a good idea alive, as you know. And finally, I'll give you a plan and the exact files. So the takeaway is I'm aiming for one scenario plus one short reflection per week, and that can build ethical AI habits without let's say ruining language objectives. And if you run that for, let's say, 4 weeks, you'll see the gears start to turn a little bit. So, okay. Let's ground this in what your students or students actually do. A typical, let's say, B2 student might copy a paragraph into a translator or feed a summary into a paraphraser, or might ask a chatbot to tidy up the cohesion of a piece of a text. So none of these steps is evil, and to be honest, some are very efficient. So the problem is that they're invisible. So when the tool sits between the student and the audience, questions like, for example, whose let's say perspective is being centered here, or what data was this answer built on? Nobody asks these questions. And that's why I frame ethical AI literacy with 3 small verbs that are easy to remember and easy to teach. First of all, the first verb is recognize. I mean, can you spot that something is off? For example, a missing voice, a stereotype, a frame that leans one way. The second verb is interrogate. What is the likely source of this output, and what patterns might be shaping it? And the third verb is impact. By that, I mean who benefits or is sidelined if we publish this text exactly as it is. and then act, accept, revise, or reject, but always on purpose. With a one sentence reason. You have to give a one sentence reason for it. So, because we are all language teachers, this is what I assume, we are uniquely, let's say, positioned to do this. We already teach audience, register, tone, stance, hedging, language, cohesion. Let's say, in other words, the social life of the text is what we teach. Uh, Ethical AI literacy is a natural extension here. So it's not about banning tools. It's about, let's say, teaching the judgment to use these tools responsibly. So if a student can narrate why a sentence needs to change, not just to sound, let's say, better, but to be, let me put it this way, to be fairer or more accurate, then hopefully we've made progress that transfers beyond our classroom. And yeah, so okay, the gap we targeted and our research questions here. Okay, why run a pilot at all? Because the literature is rich in positional statements and uh, fairly thin on measured classroom, let's say, repeatable routines. So I choose the B2 level deliberately, and these learners are already independent enough to discuss ethics in English with a bit of scaffolding, of course, and they're the heaviest users of translation and paraphrasing tools from my experience, in my context at least. So we kept the research questions modest and, let's say, school friendly. So first, if we insert one scenario-based lesson per week for 6 weeks, uh, does a student's accuracy on a short bias detection test improve? And it's a blunt, let's say, instrument, but it's fast and doesn't swallow teaching time. So second, irrespective of test scores, how does the language or students' reflections evolve? So do they move from generalities like "this is not fair" or uh, such a statements to specifics like "this frames success as, for example, male STEM only"? So I replaced X with Y and added Z to widen uh, representation. So these are some questions. So we also tracked feasibility under the hood. The prep time, clarity of instructions, ease of marking, you name it. So I wanted to know if a normal teacher mid-semester, let's say, could actually carry this without burning out. So you'll see in a moment that the routine is intentionally light. There are 2 tiny checkpoints in each task and a short reflection log, let's say, that we can scan quickly. And that's the spirit of the whole design here. Okay. Yeah, we will get into that part. If you just wait a little bit, we will talk about that source bias and impact. There are some cue cards because the limitations. I might not be able to share all those files with you, but I'll share the link. So when you see those files and then you go through them, hopefully by the end of this presentation, after you look at those files, you can get better understanding and see what source bias and impact is, SBI. Yes. So okay. Yes. Here might make the picture clearer to you. The framework 5-stage flow plus source bias and impact cue card or pocket card. You're welcome. So, okay. So here is the engine of the routine. So each week, students, work through 5 compact stages. Stage 1 is the brief, which must feel like, a job they could actually face. It could be a newsletter item, a chatbot reply, a short immigration piece, something like that. Stage 2 is the AI interaction. So students do not imagine the AI. They actually, query an LLM, large language model, and look at the output together. And stage 3 is the bias spotting pass with the source bias and impact card. And as I said, S is for source. What is this likely, built from, and what does that imply? B is for bias. So, do we see representation gaps, stereotypes, or a frame that just only pushes a single story? And I is short for impact. Who benefits or is harmed if we keep this as is? So I think now your question is answered. Uh, so yeah. So stage 4 is the decision. Uh, accept, revise, or reject it with a one sentence rationale. Okay. So stage 5 is the language production. It's a short rewrite. It could be a spoken pitch or a mini report that shows the repair. So 2 micro checkpoints. Here we got 2 micro checkpoints that make data collection painless here. It is just a yes, no tick for did you detect bias? Yes or no? And a single justification sentence for that, okay? And that's all I collected week by week, and it keeps the teacher load, let's say, tolerable, and it gives you a clean sheet of numbers to analyze later. So the source bias impact card, that cue card, is literally a small card, pocket size, so learners can carry it from one task to the next and even into, other courses. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide, a concrete example, week 2, for example, spotlight. So, okay, let's just make it concrete. Okay, in week 2, the brief was a short, let's say, inspire alumni notice for college website. Pairs, students got into pairs and they use an LLM to suggest 3 stories. So the model gave out 3 male success stories, and nothing outrageous, but a pattern that many of us have seen 1,000 times, okay? With the source bias and impact card in hand, students first recognize the representation gap, as I just talked about it. For example, are there any stereotypes, or does, is there a frame that pushes a single story or not? So first they recognized the representation gap, then they interrogated it. What might be in the training data that pushes this exemplars that I will show to you to the top, and also the impact. What will a prospective student, let's say, understand or infers about who gets celebrated if we publish this, let's say, production or whatever that has been produced. So they chose to revise, and the task asked them to create, let's say, compact rewrite that introduced at least one cohesive device and made room for different kinds of impact. For instance, a woman leading a community health initiative, or a graduate with disability shaping, accessibility design, an arts graduate driving, cultural projects. I mean, importantly, students, didn't just swap names. They also adjusted the language, replacing vague, for example, praise with precise contributions, and they balanced the register and tone. So they ticked the bias checkbox and wrote one sentence rationale. So we somehow widened this lens, and then we moved on. So the whole cycle, took about 45 minutes, and still, left half of the lesson for our regular syllabus content here. Okay. So let's. Okay. Methods built for real classrooms. So we kept the methods tight, so they would fit in a normal term. Okay, 50 B2 level students worked with 5 teachers over 6 weeks. So the bias detection test had 12 items, and presented as short AI generated excerpts, and students indicated whether each was biased, and if so, what type. And we use 2 parallel forms, A and B. As I said, you must be you must see all these forms that I have uploaded on a website, whose link I will share later on. And when you see those forms, that the picture becomes clearer. So the post test wasn't simply a memory effect here. And the reliability in pilot data was also good. So for reflection depth, that is our main focus, we use a 4-point rubric across 3 dimensions. I mean, naming the bias precisely, what kind of bias, describing the linguistic repair that it needs, and starting a forward action for next time. So 2 trained raters scored the matched baseline, and they post logs, and the agreement was solid at kappa 0.78. And some students missed a log, and we analyzed 39 matched pairs for the Wilcoxon test. So finally, because feasibility kills not all but most good ideas, we asked teachers to rate the preparation time, clarity, and also ease of reviewing all those logs from students, and also satisfaction with materials, and let's say the overall workload on 5 scale points. So I wanted honest feedback on whether this routine would survive 5. For example, let's say week 5 of a very busy semester for you, or not. So yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay, results, the numbers. Okay, here is the summary that we are going to look at. And yeah, on the, let's say, 12-item bias test, as you see in these figures, the pretest mean was 6.04 plus or minus 1.84 with a standard error of 0.6, and the post-test mean was 5.94 plus or minus 1.78 with a standard error of 0.25, and pair t-test was t with 49 degrees of freedom equals 0.28, and p equals 0.77 9 and Cohen's d equals 0.04, and essentially no change. But as I told you, here the reflection depth is what we focused on. So 6 weeks of weekly scenarios did not lift rapidly bias recognition on a short quiz. Now let's take a look at the let's say reflection depth, and the median rose from 3 to 4 on the 4-point rubric, whose file you can take a look at later on. And the Wilcoxon on 39 matched pairs gave capital W equals 0 and P equals 0.00031 and R equals 0.88. I'm not going to bore you with the numbers. So it was a very strong effect. And let's say in plain English, students got much better at naming the exact bias and explaining the language fix that it needed. Okay, so they applied it and saying what they would do next time. So how do we read the combination of quiz scores and deeper reflections? Well, to me, it maps to just habit information. I mean, as I mentioned early in this session, metacognition, the ability to, let's say, explain your reasoning often improves before fast automatic recognition does. So if you extend the routine or increase the dose, I would expect recognition to follow. Even if it doesn't, the ability to explain and repair ethically, from my perspective, is valuable. And it is, let's say, a valuable, teachable outcome in its own right. Okay. So let's move on, please. What the students wrote, and can we afford it? Okay, the qualitative picture helps us see the change here. Across 300 weekly logs and 4 themes kept repeating. First, hidden bias awareness was there. About a third of entries showed students catching exclusion they would have missed before. I mean, for example, disability, migration framing, who gets named and who gets blurred, such things. And the codes in the table are also representative. For example, I didn't catch it at first, but this example leaves out blah, blah, blah. So the second one is language ethics linkage here. If you're wondering what it has to do with ethics, maybe this answers your question. As students, tied fairness to wording choices. Instead of be inclusive, let's say as a slogan, they started saying, I replaced X with Y and I added Z because it balances the frame and it avoids a stereotyping. So that's exactly where we want the conversation, at the level of sentences and at the level of choices. So here there is a linkage between language and ethics. So the third one is peer accountability. Those exchanges mattered as students learn to name the bias before proposing the fix. Okay, first they name what kind of bias and then they fix it. So that order kept us from huge edits that left the frame intact. And the fourth one, future vigilance. Learners said that they would apply the maybe checklist to their emails later on and to their proposals, and even, for example, the social posts that they post up on Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot. And and that is the transfer that we were looking for and we wanted. A habit that leaves the classroom. And on feasibility, the overall workload rating was a flat 3 out of 5. So it was somehow moderate. And after the initial setup and weekly, preparation, averaging about 25 minutes, and thanks to a reusable scenario bank with those files and a small set of common stems, it was manageable and doable. So in other words, this is survivable in the middle of a real term. And yes. Okay. Yes, LLM were or are trained on biased materials. His project shows how students can identify and repair the exactly. That is the main reason. And focus. Thank you for the clarification, Susan. Okay. Yes, as I told you, Julia, there are a couple of files and forms and cue cards that you might need to go over in order for the whole picture to come alive and make more sense. So I hope this is tantalizing enough, or let's say practical enough for you to go and take a look at those files too. Okay. So let's move on, please. Yeah, sure. Okay, adoption steps, toolkit, and limits. Okay, let me give a simple adoption plan. If you want to try this with minimal friction, choose 4 scenarios from the bank whose file is available that align, to your next, for example, 4 units. You can print source bias impact cue card, which is also available in that resource that I've prepared for you, and give 1 to each student. And set up the 6-item reflection from the 6-item reflection form with 3 quick Likert items and 3 short prompts for them. Then every week, collect the 2 micro checkpoints that we reviewed earlier, the bias detection, yes, no, and a 1-sentence rationale for it. And score the reflections with the 4-point rubric that rubric is also available. And that's it. So that is how you do it, okay? So everything that I've shared there is open and editable. Yes, you see the link here, DOI. You might want to check it later on. And it's on the slide. So the scenario bank, the reflection form, the cue card, there are 2 parallel bias test forms and the rubric with exemplars. If you can just localize them freely. And you can swap in a scenario that resonates in your own region, or retarget the language focus to match your scheme of work. So there are some limits to keep in mind. This was a single site pilot across only 6 weeks. So without, and there was no control group here. So just the quick test measured recognition, not the quality of repair, just recognition. So a strong next step is maybe a delayed treatment design plus discourse analysis of the rewrites. So we can track, whether a student's repairs genuinely change framing or the agency and also their presentation over time. But even, with those limits, I would encourage you to run maybe 4-week micropilot. And if you all achieve is that your students can explain in, clean English, why a sentence need to change and how to change it fairly, that is, already a big step toward responsible AI use. or ethical AI use in language learning. So if you do try it, please let me know what changed. And I'd love to learn from you and your context, and I will happily, share updated scenarios back with attribution. So, yes. Okay, this is the session recap. Let's just recap it very quickly. Yes. So let's have a quick recap to close the session. We started with why this matters now, and uh, as we all know, AI is already in the uh, student workflow. So the thing that we need to teach, I believe, is judgment, uh, and we shouldn't pretend that it isn't there. So we named the gap, and we said two simple questions. Then we looked at the whole routine in one picture. There is a 5-stage scenario, and there is a source bias impact card, a cue card, and I gave you a week 2 example and the methods that fit a real timetable. And also we took a look at the quiz, and the quick quiz stayed flat, but the reflection depth stepped up from 3 to 4, and the students could name the bias and explain the language fix and say what they do next. And that was a good step for us. So we checked what learners actually wrote and noted, and the teacher's load was moderate. And also we finished with let's say a zero drama adoption plan, one scenario and one short reflection per week for 4 weeks using the open toolkit, whose link is available. So yes, everything is covered, and if you try it, I'd love to hear what shifts in your context. So yeah,